This is, yeah, so, we're just winging it here. My idea is to do something called a blue collar.
Hmm.
It's the name of the podcast.
Right.
And do you know why it's called blue collar? Did I explain that to you?
Yeah, you said blue collar for blue collar worker and blue cheese.
No, false. Blue, when like a comedian or a comic has blue material,
Yeah.
you know what that means? It's like a little
Inappropriate.
inappropriate off color,
Well, that's
dirty.
what I'm about.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I've known you to be like incredibly humorous and funny all the time,
Yeah.
no matter the situation. And so I wanted to tie in, the aspect of, oh yeah, here we are. What's that?
It's Willie Mays.
Oh, cool.
It's on my desk.
Yeah, so blue collar, you're a blue collar guy, you're an electrician, you've been an electrician your entire life. Um, there's a deep need that I've seen, and I've seen other people needing on content in social media of uh, stories and wisdom and nuggets of wisdom from people, older generations, right?
Like me.
Yeah, like you. That's where kind of the genesis of this all came from. Um, uh, you having a certain slant to your humor, I thought, okay, let's do this. Let's call it. I know your humor is blue. You're a blue collar guy. It's called blue collar. Okay, so look, there's no structure to this. There's no like I don't have a plan. I mean, I have a long-term plan, but I just kind of wanted to break the seal on it. I wanted to get the origin story of this podcast going and out there just to see how it feels.
Okay.
I've never done this before. I've always wanted to, do something with you in this capacity, but I never
Okay.
really knew how to do it or what to do. And I'd always kind of get bogged down in planning it or whatever it may be. And I thought, just fuck it. Let's do a conversation and let's just have every time we do this be a conversation and then let it evolve. I want to get guests on. I want to get, you got tons of friends in blue collar positions in New Jersey that I think are characters that could be like characters in TV shows if they really wanted to be. I think we should get them
Like Larry,
like Larry Scacchetti, for example, to where
Bob Moore.
yeah, where we're not exactly where we're doing it this way. I also come and visit you a lot, so we could do it that way. Where we're in person, get a little podcast set up. Uh, but that's kind of where this all came from. And I thought, man, throughout the days, I'll call you or you'll call me because you're driving from job to job, and you'll either tell me something hilarious, unbelievable, or something hilariously unbelievable.
Coincidental.
Huh?
Coincidental.
Coincidental, and it's just, or it's like, you'll call me and say, I got a story for you, and then it'll like stay with me for a couple days because it was hilarious, and it's like it's just that kind of shit.
Like almost getting arrested.
Yeah, like almost getting arrested. So I thought that we there should be a format within which we can kind of capture this and distill it in this way and have it episodic, where you and I are talking more like this, and it's more within this format that I can then, put together, post, and share with the world, and see what happens. So that's kind of where it all came from. Um, uh, that's it. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's a cool idea? Should we do this?
Oh yeah, I think whenever anything comes up, I should either write it down, but I don't want to bother you while you're working because you're more regimental than I am,
Yeah, yeah.
if that's a word. Um,
Regimented.
I can always just walk away from what I'm doing. You can't. So I
Right.
would have to text you first and say, "Are you free?" And if you're free, you can call me and I could stop what I'm doing for a little bit. We can put something together for a couple of minutes and then we can carry on.
Yep. But I always got to call you back because it's always worth the call, whether it's, like I said, something funny or crazy. Um, I think I've thought about because I had this idea maybe like 6 months ago for this blue collar podcast, and I thought, and I kept thinking more into, w- why, the why behind it, and you being in your position and on account of the jobs that you've done, I think you having like a humorous perception of it, it probably is like kind of a coping mechanism, right? Sometimes, because
Oh yeah.
sometimes you're in a 120-degree attic and you and you're
She's
just
like a little kid walking into the room.
I know, and you're like, how do I deal with this? I guess I gotta be a jokester and either, joke with the other people I'm working with or the homeowner or, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and so like what was the shittiest job you've been on where you're like, how am I going to get through this? And then inevitably, you enter the humor and then there you are, you're better for it because of it.
Better for it. Oh,
Well,
geez.
'cause you told me recently, we were on the phone, and you're like, most of my jobs in my career have been pretty simple and straightforward. And then so I got thinking about, okay, so then what were the few that weren't? Like, what were the ones that were just like the most backbreaking,
Oh,
pain
yeah.
in
Well,
the
there was
ass?
one. We were putting a sign on top of a building, on a parapet, like overlooking a driveway and a garage and everything for some warehouse up in Mahwah, but it was the middle of the winter and we had to install it. It was snowing. It was like, 10 or 15 degrees. That was tough. That was not, because the fingers didn't work then. I mean, they don't work now, but they did work less then. That kind of wind chill and everything. That was tough.
You're 70,
And
what?
there was nothing funny about that either.
How old are you now?
72.
When did you start your career as an electrician?
Well, I didn't know it was going to be my career, but I started helping my father when I was like 12 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I would help him every summer. And then when I was in high school, let's say, between football and wrestling, you had 3 days off. So I'd work for him those 3 days. Or if I had a day off between wrestling and track, I'd work those 2 days. And then I'd work with him on weekends when I wasn't doing anything. I'd just work. And here I am.
So was he teaching you when you guys were like on the job? Would he be like, all right,
Oh,
my,
he'd take time out.
huh?
He'd take time out and teach me the basics.
And
The
that's how you,
basics.
and that's how
Huh?
you worked. And then you got to a place where you were self-sufficient from that, or did you have to then?
Well, yeah, I had to because he died when I was 19. So that's when I quit college, came home, got a few jobs. I was doing jobs on the side, which you're really not supposed to do, but did them anyway. And then when I had to teach myself from there.
And then, do you remember the
I
moment?
had some good bosses. I had a few good bosses that taught me a lot too.
Uh-huh.
You know, like wiring a whole house. There was a guy, Neil Herring was his name, Anchor Electric. As his wife actually was a teacher at my high school, and he was good. I mean, he taught me how to, wire boilers, air conditioners, whole houses. But my father taught me the basics, and just being handy with my hands, being able to work all kinds of tools. And then as I got older, I'd buy a tool and say, geez, how did I get along without this? Just recently I bought an oscillating saw. How did I get along without this? Or a circuit tracer, and that took two people. The circuit tracer you only really need one person. So yeah, you just working by yourself isn't the worst thing in the world. It's kind of satisfying,
Mm-hmm.
you know. You go to work, you can take lunch whenever you want. If I
Yeah.
worked for anybody, I'd be fired because I always take lunch between 11 and 11:30.
That is the silver lining that you've never worked since you were what, early 20s. You've never had a boss.
No. Let's say I stopped having a boss when I was closer to 30, but I was doing work on the side. My work on the side, I didn't have a boss. But when I left, the last job I had where I had a boss was Lennon Fink, division of Procter and Gamble. And that was the last place I had a boss because my job there was Um, Procter and Gamble was up in Mawa, not Mawa, I'm sorry, Montvale. And I was an in-house electrician there. We had our own little shop. There were about four or five of us, and our job was building partitions for people, installing outlets and running circuits, inside an existing building. And it was good.
When,
You
when
know,
you so earlier in so you're talking about the early stages of your career. What
yeah.
was what was like one of the first hardest lessons that you had to learn on the job, but because you fucked up in some big way and you're like, oh, I never can do that again, or I'll never do it that way again. And how did you learn? I know that you told me that story about the the fireball in your face.
Oh, yeah. I had just finished rewiring a furnace. There's
And
a difference between
what stage of your career was this? How old were you?
I was working for Don Blasberg at the time, and I worked for him from being like I was close to 20. I was 19, about 4 years, 19, until I was about 23. And I was wiring a boiler, and I finished wiring it. Public service had just come to, hook up the gas and everything. So I turned the switch on, and there was a little switch on the side of the furnace to hold it because it wouldn't start without the door on. So I held the button and I wanted to see it ignite. It ignited and a flame came out the width of the furnace and engulfed my head, threw me up against the wall. Any beard I had was gone. My eyebrows were gone. My mustache singed up. And the next thing I knew, I was sitting in the back of a police car on my way to the hospital. I said, "Boy, you guys got here quick." They go, "No, it took us 20 minutes to get here." But that time just flew right by. But that wasn't pleasant
Doesn't
at all.
sound pleasant.
And there was a few more, testing. I worked for a company that made paper for hot stamping, and our biggest customer was Hallmark Cards, and there were heating units on the roof, and the spark plugs were about this big, and the only way to check the spark plug was to turn on the machine, and I held it with a pair of insulated pliers up against the machine to see if it was a spark. But the one time I did it, there was a little hole in the insulation on the pliers, and when it
Oh
ignited,
no.
it was a lot. It burnt a hole in the palm of my hand, and I couldn't let go, and that was tough.
Oh
That's
no. Why
else
couldn't you let go? Was it like singed to your
because I was being electrocuted. Your muscles contract,
palm?
and it was shaking back and forth like that. And finally, I guess the blood runs out of your arm, and I dropped it. And then there was a time that that same job, the heating tunnels. I got to work. We had a locker room where we had to wear our uniforms, and I was the place opened up at 6. I would get there at 6:30. The machines were running. I touched the door to get into the locker room, and the machine behind me blew up. It threw me through the door into the hanging uniforms, and I didn't really know what happened. I went back into the warehouse through the door that it blew me through, and the whole machine was on fire. There were doors on it, and flames coming out. But fortunately and unfortunately, there was a door, fire escape in the locker room. So I went back in there to go out, and but that's where the dust collector was, which would collect the silver and gold dust. And that thing was on fire. That's where the explosion was. So I had to go back into the building and run through the smoke. Couldn't see where I was going. Made my way outside, and we had an elderly gentleman. His name was Helmut Klaus. He was working for us, and he had a really bad hip, and I couldn't find him outside. So I went back into the building. I was yelling for him, and I couldn't see. And I finally grabbed somebody, and it was a fireman that was wearing a mask. So I went back outside. The helmet was already outside, so I ran into the building for nothing because he wasn't there. And actually, seven of us spent the weekend in the hospital because we had all this gold and silver dust that we breathed for a while.
It's probably still trace amounts in your lungs.
Maybe, but I don't feel any effects from it. That was a long time ago. I mean, Arlen was only, she was less than a year old at the time. So that was about 48 years ago.
There's like despite all that, it's a good job. Like especially these
Oh,
days.
it's a really good job. I mean, right
Especially,
now, being my age, um, I tell everybody it's a hobby I get paid for.
Yeah.
And I mean, what day can you is bad when you can just go to work, fix things, build things, wire things, and come home with a smile on your face every day. I
Yeah.
work a solid 5 days a week, and on Saturdays I'll do a bunch of service calls or estimates, and it's
And
my social life too.
it's your social life, and it's in more demand than it's ever been because I think you told me once that for every what 20 electricians retiring, you only get 10 replacing them, which is I've
Well,
never seen a
not
dip like
not
that.
really with electricians, but plumbers are like that.
I'm sure
I mean,
electricians not too far behind.
oh, probably not because well, plumbers people don't want to be carrying around tubs up and down stairs. Back then, that's what plumbers were doing. The tubs were cast iron, so they weighed a ton. Now they're fiberglass, they weigh next to nothing, or they're called something else, but they weigh a fraction of the weight. But a lot of the electricians I know that I'm friendly with and that I recommend to people because first of all, the ladder on the top of my truck is for show. I very rarely use it. Um, the guys that I know have 6 or 7 guys working for them, so nobody really wants to do the stuff I do. And people say, "Oh, thanks. You don't have to stick around." I said, "No, I enjoy talking to you. This is my social life."
Yeah.
So after I finish work and I talk to them about one thing, like the other day, I told you it was somebody I worked for a few years ago. It's the guy that was in Germany in the army the same time Elvis was there.
Hmm.
But we were talking about music. They're in their 80s, close to 90, and we are talking about music for a half hour, 45 minutes before I left.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm telling them asking them what they like, and they actually like some of the stuff I do. She put it on her Pandora to listen to. There's music I listen to now that I didn't like then.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I know. What I find super cool and interesting and fascinating, like you mentioned your social life. Like I can't if I wish you had a counter of all the homes and jobs that you've been on. I mean, it's got to be in the hundreds of thousands at this point.
oh, probably, yeah. And
You know?
with crazy things I notice, people's addresses, how the numbers are the same sometimes. Well, I'm working at 42677 Main Street, and then I get a job a week later at 42677 Elm Street.
Wow.
It's just
Synchronicity.
and phone numbers. I'm
Yeah,
good with numbers.
you have to be.
Yeah.
Have to be. And
I'm good at algebra because electricity is algebra.
really,
You're always figuring out the Ohm's law. Ohm's law is algebra.
tell me more about that.
Well, you got to figure out. Um, People say, what, I have a 240-volt line, yeah, but how many amps? I go, well, I don't know. I said, well, it depends on what size wire you run. And I'm talking to them on the phone, and they'll say, all right, do me a favor, tell me how many watts it is, and they'll tell me how many volts it is. Okay, all right, now I can figure out how many amps it is. You take the wattage divided by the voltage, it tells you how many amps you're going to be using. you know. And I deal with simple stuff. I don't do the big stuff like my friend Brian or Fidel. I
Mhm,
keep it simple
mhm,
now.
mhm. Um, that's a skill set that I don't know anyone who could do that.
It's once you do it a few times, it's easy.
Well, yeah, like anything else, right?
Yeah. I
But
always
that,
tell people, like I was working at somebody's house this morning and they said, I tried to do this. I tried, and it just wouldn't work. And I fixed the problem, in 10 minutes. And and I asked him, I said, well, what do you do? And he tells me, and I said, well, I can't do what you do, and you can't do what I do. I said, tell him everybody's good at something. So
yeah.
don't think I'm better than you or you're better than me. That's just the way it is. Everybody's good at something.
Well, I think this is like a really good example, proof of concept of where we can take conversations like these because like I love the different kind of categories that we jumped into, but I think this is great. I think this is dope. Like we can do this
Right.
and go down certain paths and get, categorized and focus here
Yeah.
and focus there. And then I think when we bring like your friends on, then
Yeah.
it could be like a group dynamic.
Good. Oh, I've already spoken to them. They're into it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And like the borough of Westwood, I wouldn't be as busy, started out with with coaching. I coached Arlen in softball and Garrett and you. And next thing I know, the borough of Westwood is an account of mine.
Hmm.
Or I get my bagels at Goldberg's Bagels every day. Now I work at all of Howie's bagel stores.
It's endless.
It's endless. It just goes on. And
Yeah.
I thought a couple of years ago I was going to stop getting business cards because I really don't want to hand them out. But I hand out like 10 business cards a day. Like the other day, I went to Wegmans and guy parks in front of me. We're nose to nose, and he goes, "You Newman Electric?" I said, "Well, today I am." And he goes, "I need an electrician. Are you Newman?" I go, "Yeah." So he goes, "I'll give you." He goes, "My name's Mike." I said, "Well, hi, Mike. I'm Mike." You know, well,
Everyone's
first of
like,
all, I have about 70 or 80 mics on my phone.
that's insane.
It is Mike's or Michael's, and some people are like TV mic. I have a TV mic in the phone.
Yeah.
It's like the Italian thing, you
Yeah.
know, Mikey the plumber, Tommy real estate. I got TV mic, stuff like that.
Michael had to have been the most popular name in the
It
50s.
is the most popular name,
Well, it's not today. Today it's probably like Lucas or something, but
or Biff.
yeah, but back then, like post-war, I'm sure Michael was like
Yeah.
every other kid.
By the way, it means little angel, and
Michael?
yeah, and I'm the complete 180 of that.
Yeah, must have been opposite day for your parents that day.
Yes.
But no, I look forward to like I want to keep doing this and like I said, I come back to Jersey a lot, and so I want to get a little bit of a rig, camera set up, where we're setting up you and me, and we're having this conversation in person, but then there's a third chair, and then there's someone there,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I don't know any one of my friends that wouldn't want to do it. Friends
yeah,
or contract. Larry would be all over. We could do it in Larry's basement where he builds his guitars.
we could do that. We could bring it in there. So you have, you have friends who are, plumbers, carpenters, contractors, other
Even
electric.
Bill Hickey.
Bill Hickey, who's a good friend of yours who works for he's a production guy. He's a cameraman, works for
Yeah.
CBS News.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the point is these guys are like seasoned, experienced blue collar guys that can like the kind of guys that could fix anything that just have like a base of knowledge for so
Yeah.
much that the pe people today don't have. And I
Yeah.
think people want to see that.
Yeah. Don't forget Brian, my brother from another mother.
Of course. And the bonus to all of this is that all these guys are just endlessly hilarious and humorous and have so much to say in funny ways. So I think we can add a lot of value from our conversations to people who watch by, through education, through experience, through wisdom, but also like just basic like know-how. Like,
Yeah.
we could talk about like I want to ask Larry like what's the most common thing that your customers ask you about where if they just ha knew what to do, they would never have to call me. It's like that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
want those kinds of conversations going and give little nuggets of wisdom and humor along the way.
You know who would be a good one? John Trapet.
Hmm.
You know, um,
Again, an older
we could
blue
do
collar
it. We
guy
we
who
could do
did,
it in his studio.
yeah,
He
he did,
loved doing stuff like that.
yeah, so you're in, North Jersey, he worked in New York City as an audio technician, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did all the soundtracks for like I think right now his biggest account is Netflix, but
Yeah.
he used to do Oprah's show, um, but he did a lot of TV shows.
Yeah,
You know, it
so
is.
kind of like I want you to be like my Ed McMahon in those situations,
Mhm.
to where I'm there, I'm kind of running the show, but you're helping ease the guest in and get them comfortable, and then it's just you
It
guys.
just goes.
It just goes. I'm kind of creating the structure where needed, and then we're just going to try to capture lightning in a bottle. That's kind of what I think
Yeah.
we can do.
Okay.
I think we
Well,
have the
I need a push. I mean, it's got to be like I can't start this whole thing off. I mean, I mean, you could see. I mean, you started
yeah.
and I just followed.
Well, with like all these sorts of things, they'll take shape over time, and we'll lean into things that work, and we'll discard things that don't. that's how these things go. You can't, I've been wanting to do this forever. I was just like, well, let's just freaking do it.
Yeah,
And
we could do it in the back of my truck. Be sitting in the side of my truck. We
yeah,
could do it there.
yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But it looks fairly certain that I'll be back in New Jersey in less than a month. So, we'll do this a couple more times, and then when I'm there, we'll do it. We'll do it there. We'll line
Okay.
up some guests. We'll get a little studio setup going, wherever that may be,
Hey,
and we'll take it from there.
um, do you know what date you're coming back?
I have to be there October 9th, so sometime before October 9th. Don't know when.
Okay, let me look at,
Let you know. But
just want
for the sake of this podcast, we're
I
gonna.
think,
Huh?
I think the fourth or the fifth, I'm going to West Point.
Okay.
I'm
Um,
not sure.
all right, but for the sake of this podcast, we're gonna end it there, and then we'll do a little
Okay.
post-mortem, and then we'll figure out
Postmortem. Okay. Does that have to do with dead people?
something like that.
Okay.
All
All
right,
right.
cool.
Cool.
All
All right.
right.
So we'll talk later. So are you going to be um, doing anything with this video?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's some good stuff here, so we'll take it from there.
Okay. As long as it makes you happy.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's.
it makes me happy doing it,
I mean,
but
that's.
your kids are supposed to be happy.
I ain't
So,
doing this unless it's fun.
yeah. Okay. Well, I had a good time.
All right, good. We'll do it again.
Okay. I'm going to a basketball game now.
Okay. Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Thanks
Okay.
for your help.
Love you,
That's
Colin.
it.
Talk to you
That's it.
soon.
All
All
right,
right.
bye.
Bye.